Well, okay. So I think in the next, 5 years for sure, right? There's going to be this huge surge in terms of the unified namespace and having data models defined. And there's a lot of question around data models in terms of who is defining that. Like if I have a robot, um, is the customer, the end user defining what that robot looks like and that model? Is it the manufacturer? Is there an open standard out there? There's a lot around that. I think different groups are trying to figure that out. Hopefully, we get somewhere. The next 5 years. I do think that will continue because there's that real need. The data has to be modeled properly in order to go really further. I do think that a lot of that. I think SIs play a big role in that. Kind of bring it back to them because they're the ones that are implementing this, and they try to standardize themselves. I think a lot of their contribution can really be important to that. But I think this huge shift into data's got to be modeled, contextualized, and into a whatever it is, if it's MQTT broker or if it's other things, but into a space that allows us to utilize that data a lot further. Um, Along with that, if we start doing some of those, some of these models are being built out, then there's a plethora of you can actually start building analytics tools off of those data models. If there is a standard of one, let's say it's energy, or if it's a particular machine, we want to predict failures of that machine. And we know what that profile of the machine looks like. And then we could build the analytics around it. It's going to make that more accessible to people to use that. And I do think that integrators play a role there and help build those tools. And hopefully they can provide, I think there will be more vendors that provide services that allow these kind of native applications or to be built out and be used and consumed by customers because they have the expertise to do so. So I think there will be a lot in that space because there is certainly you can go buy there's some IoT companies that you can go buy their sensor and they already have the cloud service and do the AI and ML for you. That works, right? But it's going to be for that data only. But what about all the other data you got, right? And you've got a plethora of machines and equipment. And I think the more that we start attacking that collaboratively, again, rising tides bring all ships up, right? That ultimately we can see that proliferation happening because the customer will benefit from the results of those, right? Whatever that's going to be. So I do think that's a big part of this next 5 years. And I even see a shift in the cloud providers and some of these services where one company can't do all, right? They can't provide everything, soup to nuts, right? You have to realize that there's an ecosystem at play and kind of that willingness to collaborate and to play in that space. I think more of that will happen, and there will be some pretty cool advancements that will go from there. So I think that's the kind of more short term future, right? Once you get there, then you have the ability. Vlad, you were asking earlier about augmented reality or virtual reality. I think there's a big space for augmented reality to bring in terms of training new people and simulations, in terms of being able to go out and get and have there is wearables and things can help if it's done right, can help augment and provide more context to the person doing their job. I do think that is beneficial. But there's a lot of things that have to be solved before we can do that. Right now, it's all custom, right, to make that happen. I think if we can build these blocks, then those things become a lot easier to actually approach. Because then there's, for example, if you had no particular machine, an algorithm can be built so that it can, if a camera can detect that's the machine and then know what to do with that, right, and show it.
Will there be one group that comes and takes over this is how we will build a standardized data model, a structure, right? Right now, right. Lots of us are doing it bespoke per client. We've got the ISA, we have OPC-UA, we have MQTT and SparkLoB. We've got a bunch of different groups. And will there be one group that kind of rises above all? I'm not even going to ask you to tell me which one, but will there be one that comes out ahead in this?
This is a highly contested space.
Yes.
It's really hard to predict that. I do think that one will become more on top only for the fact that there's new organizations that are being structured to help advance, for example, advanced manufacturing. There's organizations that are built to that purpose and getting funding by government to help advance manufacturing. And they have to be able to solve these kind of challenges. They're not going to build this stuff themselves. They're going to figure out what's going to be the right standard to go forward. And I think even companies like robotics companies are, I think they're even starting to realize the standard is important, and they're coming together and building a standards body around what that model should look like. And so I do think it'll start to get to that. It's just going to really takes vendors and the community at large to just want to do that adoption, right? And to buy into it. I know we've been doing it ourselves for so long. It just has to change if we want, because if we can get there, more stuff gets unlocked. We're not doing it ourselves, right? We're able to collaboratively do it rather than trying to reinvent the wheel every time.